Larry Fink from BlackRock has already predicted all of this. And I'm not joking when I say that I think something is really strange. We also had a discussion recently about companies saying they expect the unemployment rate in the US to rise from 4 to over 20% in the next 5 to 10 years. And I don't think that's a joke. I think we're currently witnessing money being withdrawn and moving in ways we've never experienced or been able to calculate before. There was an article titled, US Household Debt Collapses. Household debt in the US has surpassed $18 trillion. 18 trillion? And the number of people who can't pay their debts is rising sharply. And this statistic comes from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And companies like BlackRock are buying up everything. Land, single-family homes, just everything. You've probably even noticed that this has been reported on. People are being laid off and no new ones are being hired. Automation and AI, artificial intelligence, are taking over more and changing everything. There was also just an article about Tesla robotaxis. They're now allowed to drive in some US cities and are running test drives, and we all know where this is heading. That's why I also said, you need to have a talk with yourself and consider it. This isn't meant to scare you, but to get you to think clearly. Do you have enough assets? Do you have enough money for the future? Probably not. You absolutely need to protect yourself against what's coming. And when I say something is happening, I mean the extreme devaluation of the US dollar and also the euro. And to me, it's really strange how suddenly everyone is betting on Bitcoin, all the companies, BlackRock, Larry Fink, and so on. And maybe you think all of this is normal if you've already been in the crypto space for half a year or a whole year, if you're here, or if there are Bitcoin ETFs. But if you've been around for a while, you should ask yourself some questions and also make sure to store your cryptocurrencies offline, not on centralized crypto exchanges. If you want to store them offline, click the link in the description below the video. There you'll find a way to do that. And if you want to achieve financial independence through Bitcoin and crypto, you'll also find the link for that in the description below the video. And you might be used to companies, organizations, and institutions buying Bitcoin and entering the market, at least if you haven't been around for very long. It's a kind of big official trend that we're experiencing right now, but what's happening right now is really strange. In the past, people didn't speak positively about Bitcoin and crypto. People like Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Larry Fink from BlackRock, and Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan said that Bitcoin is scary, terrible, and only for criminal activities. Jamie Dimon even said that he would fire employees if he found out they were investing in Bitcoin. And around 2019 and 2020, we started to get positive attention, meaning people in Bitcoin and crypto. But even then, it was like this. Yes, we're looking into it, but this movement of money into the crypto space is strange, and I think it's all somehow connected. It's no coincidence that the US dollar is being deliberately devalued and we're waiting for interest rates to fall, the head of the US central bank is leaving, and fiat currencies are getting weaker and weaker, while crypto and other assets are rising at exactly this time, and more companies are buying Bitcoin. This is not a coincidence, but a plan that has been running behind the scenes from the very beginning. And last year, we heard that several countries are also getting into crypto and mining Bitcoin. And I asked myself, why aren't we already over $200,000 per Bitcoin if all of this is happening? Why is so much big money moving into crypto right now? How do you go from I don't like Bitcoin to Bitcoin is cool and then to we're buying $500 million worth of Bitcoin, all the way up to $3.3 billion being invested in Bitcoin? For that to happen, you must have some special information, for example, as a company that's only worth $200 million, to decide to take on debt in order to buy as much Bitcoin as possible or to invest billions in Bitcoin. And in case you missed it, 9 companies in the UK have just announced that they also want to invest millions in Bitcoin. And where's all this coming from? I think the debt is worse than we think. You always hear about the high levels of debt in the news, but I believe it's much worse than we understand or than it appears. Companies like BlackRock are putting billions of dollars into an entirely new asset class that has only existed for 16 years. And we keep hearing about once a month how Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, openly says that the US dollar is collapsing and the debt is no longer sustainable. He even said that if the US doesn't get its deficit under control, Bitcoin will become the world's reserve currency and that we should basically buy more of it. Think back to 2023, when it leaked that he was advising other investors to put 50 to 80% of their portfolio into Bitcoin, when it was still at $15,000 to $16,000 per Bitcoin. Sure, these numbers make sense now, but the whole thing is kind of crazy because it feels like everything is happening and yet nothing is. The US wants to buy Bitcoin. Other countries are already doing it. They're mining it. And over 150 companies worldwide have announced in recent months that they plan to hoard as much Bitcoin as possible. And it's not just the public companies. And yet the crypto space still feels quiet. It's not just me, right? It's like there's a huge machine pumping in the background every day, and people are literally throwing money into it. And inside the factory, everyone is just chilling like they're at the beach, and no one is paying attention to anything except the people in the crypto space. And outside, beyond the factory, people have no money. They're not thinking about saving or investing. Prices keep going up, and we're told that inflation is at 2%. Do you really believe that? Just take a look at the prices when you go shopping. If we used to pay $50 or euros for groceries, and now there's a 2% increase, that shopping trip should cost $51 or euros now, right? But we're paying a lot more than that. And I think with Bitcoin, especially when it comes to the Bitcoin price, a big part of me is just waiting to see what happens. Obviously, I'm in the market and I'm here, but a good part of me is sitting here wondering what's going to happen next. The US dollar has lost a huge portion of its value since the beginning of the year. If you haven't looked at the charts, it's rough. We're seeing companies and institutions rushing into this space as quickly as possible, buying Bitcoin, investing in crypto. The end of dollarization is happening right before our eyes. And I'm wondering what the next 6 months will look like. And I mean, when it comes to money and the markets, when we hear the CEOs of these companies talking about how in the next 5 to 10 years, no one will have a job anymore or everything will be automated, and we see all this money now being poured into crypto, into Bitcoin, how wealthy will we crypto holders be in the future? And I keep thinking about it, and I look around me and I try not to judge, but I watch what people are buying and what they're doing as well. And many aren't investing, and I can't be the only one who's noticed that. I see young people wearing the latest fashion and think you're wasting your money and your time. Then I find out that many are getting into debt, and that debt stays with them forever. Some are putting devalued currencies into crypto, and I think a lot of money is being made in that market when prices go up. But the gap between the rich and those who have nothing is going to be catastrophic in the future. And I've met people in their 30s or even 40s who have nothing, not even living paycheck to paycheck, but from paycheck to the next prayer. I see how they spend their money and realize they're digging themselves into a hole. Think about your 20s or early 30s, all that wasted money. Many wish they could get that money back to invest, but we live in a world now where people just don't pay attention anymore. That's doom spending. In the early 2020s, many people felt like they could never own a house. And now we hear phrases like, "You will own nothing and be happy." And people also think, "I'll never own an apartment, I'll never own a house," so they spend all their money now to enjoy life as if there's no tomorrow. Live your best life now. But I'm telling you, you will get older. It is what it is. So something strange is happening, and I don't know exactly what it is. I have my theories about it, but debt is rising rapidly, personal and general, and a lot of people are ignoring that right now, while these wealthy people are buying up all the cryptocurrencies, all the Bitcoin. As I've already said, you can believe me or not, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ripple XRP, and Ethereum are limited. You can have your own opinion about these coins, about Bitcoin, about Ethereum, about Ripple XRP, but there is a reason why wealthy people are buying up everything as quickly as possible. If they end up owning almost all of it, let's say 99%, and one Bitcoin is eventually worth millions, then the average person won't be able to afford any of it, but it will be this new thing that they will also want. And I believe we are heading toward a future that resembles a dystopian film from the 1980s. Remember, the US national debt has reached a critical level with current estimates of over $37 trillion. According to Fink's annual letter for 2025, interest payments for this year are expected to reach $952 billion, which exceeds the US defense budget. Larry Fink predicts that by 2030, mandatory government spending and debt servicing could consume all federal tax revenues, creating a permanent deficit. And this development could undermine confidence in the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, which currently accounts for about 59% of global foreign exchange reserves. Larry Fink even emphasized that the dominance of the US dollar brings advantages such as low borrowing costs. But this position is not guaranteed if debt continues to rise. Larry Fink warned that if the US does not get its debt under control and deficits continue to increase, America risks losing this position to digital assets like Bitcoin. This statement underscores Larry Fink's concern about the long-term stability of the US dollar and the potential consequences for the global economy. Larry Fink from BlackRock sees Bitcoin here not just as a speculative investment, but as a potential macro hedge against economic instability. And in his annual letter, he described decentralized finance as an extraordinary innovation that makes markets faster, cheaper, and more transparent. In other words, DeFi, decentralized finance. However, Larry Fink also warned that this innovation could undermine the economic dominance of the United States if investors, for example, come to view Bitcoin as a more stable store of value than, say, the US dollar. And in an interview during the World Economic Forum in Davos in January 2025, Larry Fink speculated about the impact of institutional adoption on the price of Bitcoin. He even mentioned that he had discussed with a sovereign wealth fund the possibility of allocating 2 to 5% of its portfolio to Bitcoin. Larry Fink said that if everyone were to follow this discussion, meaning investing 2 to 5% in Bitcoin, then $500,000, $600,000, or even $700,000 per Bitcoin would be realistic. So what's important is to recognize what is happening right now and take action.